Welcome, everyone. This is the first episode of Bayou Chronicles. We're your host. I'm Krystle.
And I'm Bethany.
So we wanted to do this little fun podcast project. It kind of started just randomly.
I literally posted an Instagram story and it snowballed from there, and Krystle DM'd me and was like, 100% yes, I would like to get in on this. And we kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, we are former co-workers, and we probably spent most of our day talking about stuff like this anyway.
Whatever makes your skin crawl and full body chills.
That kind of is our jam.
That's what we talked about, passing the time at work, even out of work. Texting each other, messaging each other, crazy, creepy things we found on the World Wide Web, you know?
Yeah. So, we just decided that we wanted to start this podcast, and we've been researching some cases, trying to see and figure out which ones that we wanted to start with first. Our first one, I guess we were kind of like a go big or go home kind of situation. The first case that we are going to talk about is the Gainesville Ripper.
And I will be the first to admit, I am a Floridian, born and raised for 19 years of my life. And I had never heard of this case until Krystle messaged me about it. And she was like, I have the perfect episode for us to do to start out. And I'm kind of ashamed that I'd never heard of this, even though it did happen 4 years before I was born.
But, so, I guess the reason I did kind of pick this case was because he was captured in Florida, but he is from where we are doing this podcast in Louisiana. So, it was kind of a cool little crossover. So, yeah.
It's a cool crossover because I am from that area in Florida. I spent a lot of my childhood in Gainesville, even on the campus and around the area where it did happen. And I now live in Shreveport, where we came together. And now you get Bayou Chronicles.
Yep. So, another kind of creepy part about this case is the fact that I have friends and family members who actually know this killer, who we'll talk about, Danny Rowling. They actually knew him personally. He went to the church that we'll talk about. That was the same place that my mom went to high school. So he was going to church there while my mom was in high school there. I have friends who have like really creepy stories about him. So it was kind of interesting to do a case that is kind of close to home.
Which gave me absolute goosebumps when she brought this story to my attention. I actually talked about this in the past when we were telling, stories. You get into that conversation and it just kind of like word vomit. And she was like, yeah, my mom knew a serial killer. And I'm like, you can't just drop that knowledge on somebody. And then when we got serious about this podcast, I started watching documentaries. I even messaged my mom, and I literally, while Krystle was at work, I sent her one of those voice text messages, and I said, how are you not going to tell me that the person that we are researching actually was the idea for Scream? So Amazon Prime, if you're listening, sponsor us. I went directly to Amazon Prime, purchased Scream, even though I've watched it a million times, and watched it, and it just like blew my mind. So shout out to Wes Craven, because that's a good one. Alrighty, to start this off, we're going to do this a little dysfunctional. Everything that we looked up, everybody always talks about the killings, the murders, which we're not taking away. We will respectfully talk about them, but we're going to do this a little different. We're going to start talking about Danny Rowling and his childhood and what led up to this.
Let's get into his sick, twisted mind.
Because there's a lot of people out there that say you can be a serial killer without anything happening in your childhood. But when you look at everything that happened to Danny, it was rough.
I think he's like textbook.
He's textbook. They even brought the FBI and made a perfect profile of him. and it was spot on. But Danny Rowling was born in May 26, 1954, which I'm random, and numbers and stuff and coincidences resonate with me, and my birthday is literally the day after that. Obviously, a lot of years in between, but I got the chills. But he was born here in Shreveport, Louisiana, which is where we are recording this podcast, like we said in the beginning, to Claudia and James Rowling. His father was actually a police officer, and like, isn't that just, you know?
I mean, it's sad.
It's sad, and it's like the polar opposite. Like, your child, you protect people.
But his dad was kind of a douche.
He was. When you look at it, his father was an alcoholic, beat his mother in front of him. Even when Danny was 1 year old, his father said that he was not crawling like a normal baby should, and beat him. And as a parent, I can't imagine beating either of my children because they can't crawl. So he had a rough start to life.
And I'm not saying his mom had anything to do with it, but she had plenty of opportunities to leave. And that's a topic we'll probably talk about a lot, because I know we can say things, and I say that too. Why didn't she leave? Why didn't she pack up her kids? Because his brother was born several years later, so there were two children in the household. But when you look at the mom, when Danny turned 11, his mom actually tried to commit suicide, and she was placed into a psychiatric ward for several months, which you're getting beat up by your father. Mom's not really trying to check out.
Mom's not really helping. She's got her own depression she's dealing with. Tries to kill herself because of the home life. And then you're just kind of left with the dad that's still continuing to literally beat the crap out of you.
It's definitely a sad childhood. Like, I want to feel sorry for him, because if it was any other, like, kid who didn't turn out to be a douchebag, I'd feel bad for him.
And I kind of feel like Dad had the telltale signs as well, because when he was around 5 or 6, they got a dog, a family dog, and his dad literally beat the dog to death right in front of Danny. So it's a rough childhood, a rough start to life. Does that mean you can grow up and kill 8 innocent people? No. But that's one thing I wanted to talk about, because when you watch documentaries about serial killers, that's one thing they bring up. They're not getting that nurturing, the affection, the love that, a mom and a dad is supposed to give you if you have both parents in your life. And that is a big indicator of why the switch inside of people's brain finally flips, and they just start going on a killing spree.
All I can tell you is I don't feel sorry for him after you hear about the murders. I just don't feel bad for him at all.
I don't feel bad, but I mean, that's rough. Like I said, don't go out and kill people.
I mean, it's not that hard not to kill someone.
Yeah, I know we're laughing, but like, it's this, yes. Have things happen to us? Yes.
Have I wanted to strangle someone out of frustration? But you don't.
Have you? No.
And that's a big difference.
That is balance, people. That's the balance you need in your life. You have to know when to metaphorically strangle somebody and like actually physically with your hands strangle somebody. Yeah. And that's what we're getting into here.
Okay, so a little bit about him as he grew up after coming into that really rough childhood. Danny ended up dropping out of high school in 1971, and he enlisted in the Air Force, which is also funny because we're currently sitting on an Air Force base as we record this.
He actually tried to join the Navy first, and the Navy kind of was like, yeah, no, but that's not going to work for us. You got a lot of issues going on. Which is funny that the Air Force took him to me. I mean, that's just like, shout out to the United States Air Force.
Well, they ended up in in their courts or whatever. I don't know what that phrase is. I don't even know what you say there. Anyway, whatever. But in their defense is what I'm saying. They ended up discharging him with a personality disorder and for having a drug problem and stealing a bicycle. So, they did get rid of him. But he did end up after that moving back to Shreveport. And this is kind of where it comes full circle back to my life, which feels kind of weird to even say. It's so creepy. He actually starts attending. Do I need to say the name of the church? Should I say it?
I think for legal purposes
and the fact that I don't want. I mean, people can look it up, but I'm not gonna say it. But he started attending a church that coincidentally is like really close to my house, like very close to where I currently live.
And for all the weirdos out there, please don't try to find her address.
But anyway, so he came back to church there, and that is actually where he met his future wife, by the name of, oh God, I'm going to butcher her name, Omather Halco. Sorry. Omather Halco.
Yes.
That is a mouthful.
We are the queens of mispronouncing every single name out there.
So you can come for us. I'm just going to laugh at you because
we already know.
Yeah.
We already know.
I just want to take a moment to say, or ask rather, how her mom would have come up with that name. It has an apostrophe and everything in it. Omather. But anyway, so it's important to know that Omather was petite and she had dark hair. This would be important later on in his cases.
We are foreshadowing the future.
Yes. I actually asked some people on social media if they knew anything about this guy, because when I first heard about him and started putting the pieces together into his connections to my personal life, I was like kind of weirded out. But from the sources of people that I have talked to firsthand that knew him or went to this church with him, they said that when he came back from the army, he was what they all considered a decent kid, maybe a little troubled. Some of them said that they sang in the choir with him, so I cannot imagine him singing in a choir at all. Like, can you imagine a Pentecostal church choir having Danny sing?
I can't, but one person that makes me think of that is Ted Bundy, because he was your all-together average guy, help people, and then, look what he was doing in his free time. So I think it's just like that. Like they said, he had a personality complex.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard for me to imagine him, like, singing a gospel hymn in a choir.
It's basically modern.
While he's sitting there thinking about the next person he wants to sexually assault. Like, I don't know.
It's modern 1990s Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yeah. But anyway, so they got married a few years later. They had a baby named Kylie.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah. I wonder what happened to her, though. Kind of weird.
She's probably kept her identity
a
secret, like a lot of children of serial killers. There are some that go on to write books and talk shows, but some prefer to just fly under the radar.
I think I would want to fly under the radar. I don't think I'd want many people. Well, I don't know, but here I am talking about this connection to my life. But I don't know. I guess it's different when it's your father who you...
We're random people on the internet, but I could see why you wouldn't want any connection with that.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, Danny did treat his wife and child kind of like his dad treated him and his brother and his mom. He just wasn't a good person to them. I
think this falls on like a generation abuse. You gotta break the cycle. Even though maybe your father may have treated you like that as a child, you just went on to be
I feel like that's just what he learned. Like, he just learned that this is how a man acts and this is how a man takes care of his family, and he didn't have a positive role model.
He could have, because his mom stayed. She kept coming back. She tried to leave several times with her sons, but
I think James was also
kept coming
very
manipulative.
Well, yeah, manipulative, but like he's very, what's the word, charismatic in the sense that like he could woo her back.
That's a lot. That's a word that you hear a lot of serial killers described.
Like,
how are we to know? And I kind of just thought about something. How are we to know that his father never killed somebody? It's not mentioned. It's not mentioned, but like, it's just a thought.
How many? He was a police officer. How many
people did he shoot and
that
really
weren't even justified?
That's That's a topic for another day.
I know. We could like snowball on that.
We could talk about that.
So yeah, eventually O'Mather, I think she finally just was like, I ain't putting up with this. But she was a little bit more strong-headed than Claudia was, because when she left. Like, she wanted out.
And Danny actually did physically to her face say that he was going to kill her. So I think that was just kind of like, yeah, no, that's a no for me, but I'm filing for divorce. And she got the heck out of Dodge, you know?
And so when they got divorced, that's when Danny kind of like really, I guess you would say, went off the deep end, for the lack of a better term. He ended up doing like a spree of robberies in Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, just all over. And it actually ended up being a Winn-Dixie robbery that ended up getting him put in jail for 6 years. So
he even raped a woman the day after the separation that looked exactly like his wife, which is what we were talking about. And I really think this is the thing that set him off, that started all the robberies, the sprees, the jail time, and then eventually the murders.
Yeah. I mean, I think he, in his own sick, twisted way, maybe he loved her, and then her doing this was like him abandoning her, or her abandoning him, and then it just kind of set him off. Because that's I can't justify it. I wouldn't even begin to know how to justify it, but in my head, that's the only thing that makes sense.
It just goes back to the childhood. His mom kept coming back to his father, but Danny's wife actually had the courage to leave, so it probably confused him.
Yeah, like he thought the way that his dad was treating his mom, maybe he thought that was what love was.
Which is sad.
Which is
sad.
It's so bad. But after he got out of prison, that's when he ended up coming back to Shreveport again. He's just like any other person that's from Shreveport. Once you go, it's impossible to get out. Like, you always come back to Shreveport. But anyway,
I can't confirm this.
This is when, I guess, technically it's his first attempted murder, when he tried to kill his father.
I would agree. That was in 1990. He actually shot his father in the back and the head.
Yeah.
And he actually had to have surgery, and he's missing a portion of his ear.
Yeah. I read from a source that was it was basically his mom giving the details of it, and she was saying that the two of them had gotten into a fight. James and Danny had gotten into a fight, and James stormed off and brought back a gun. And as soon as she saw the gun, she ran to the bedroom and was like covering her ears or covering her eyes. And she heard some gunshots, and she just knew that her son was dead. And when she had finally came out to see like what was going on, that's when she saw her husband James on the ground with a bullet in his head, but he was still like conscious and alive, and he survived. But Danny had just completely just ran off and just took off and into the unknown, and that's when he kind of
a lot
crazy.
A lot of red flags here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sitting here as a mom, and I'm thinking, okay, I've let my children be abused, and I'm really not victim blaming here. This is just like my personal opinion. You're watching your children be physically abused, verbally abused. Your son is now a grown adult This is 1990. He was born in 1954. He's very much a grown adult. You're physically seeing him shoot your husband, and then you still continue not to do anything. And then he goes on this murderous rampage directly after this.
Yeah, he just... I don't know. He's the type of person that I just really want to, or wish that I could just talk to in a controlled environment where I wasn't afraid to die and say...
He was really lashing out.
Like, what were you trying to accomplish? Like, was it like an attention-seeking kind of
I feel like he was asking for help. Or not necessarily asking for help. Like, his father was the main thing. The main thing where he was getting his abuse from. It's probably... His father's probably who he blames for his wife leaving him, because he thought if he treated his wife like that, she'd stay with him, and it didn't work out that way. So he probably, in his chemically imbalanced brain, shooting his father would get rid of all of his issues. And yeah, he had a bad shot. I'm very sorry, my guy. Not quite close enough, just skimmed off the ear, you know.
Well, after this is like when I guess it kind of started his downfall of who he was. Because after this is when he hops the bus and goes to Florida. And I guess he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do here, but I don't know why Florida.
I know why Florida. I know exactly why Florida is where all the weirdos are. It is where all the drug addicts are. Tell me one thing that you can't find in Florida. There's not. We have everything.
It's just like that little like trend that was like you're supposed to write, like you do your birth date and you put Florida at the end of it, and it's supposed to come up with a really hilarious like news article, because everybody has one, and I don't even remember what mine was. I swear mine was like something about a guy thinking that he tried to wrestle an alligator on bath salts or something.
And this is probably a true story. I just want to add that bath salts, you can't even imagine. Living and growing up in Florida, I have literally seen it all. And even when you look on documentaries on other serial killers, for some reason, Florida is like a hot commodity. People think they can come to the Sunshine State, which is not very sunny apparently. It's very dark, and just go on a killing rampage, and they think they'll never get caught. And yes, you will. Eventually.
So now it's going to get a little dark. We're going to kind of talk about what he was up to while he was in Gainesville. So Bethany will tell you a little bit about that.
So I'm gonna set the mood, and for people that have never traveled to the great state of Florida and have never traveled down to Gainesville, I spent a lot of time there, like I said, in my childhood. It's a rough area. So I don't know if he intentionally chose to go to Gainesville, or he kind of just hopped on the bus and that's where the bus took him.
Well, did you see that in a lot of the research that I was reading about that said that literally days before these murders, Gainesville was rated the top place to live with a family. Like, it was rated like the nicest place in the United States to live with your family.
And it was. And that might be why my take on Gainesville is different than what the mood I'm setting that I'm about to talk about, because Gainesville now, which it's not, I'm not dogging on Gainesville. It's still a really nice area to go. I mean, I've traveled there a lot as a child, but the Gainesville that I know talking about this and the Gainesville, as Krystle just said, are two different areas. So you got to think about that. These people had no idea. It literally rocked their entire world when this started happening. So let's jump on into it. So on August 24th, 1990, Danny, for whatever reason, was inside of the local Walmart, and he caught the attention of two girls. And as Krystle said before, he definitely has a type. All of these we're going to talk about definitely had a description that resembled his ex-wife. All petite, you know, dark-haired, young females. These girls were young. They were young. And Sonia Larson and Christina Powell were shopping in Walmart, of all places. Why Walmart? We go in there to people watch. We don't go in there to have a serial killer stalk us. They're shopping for their brand new apartment that they have just gotten together for school. They're getting stationery for class because class is about to start. Probably a few odds and ends for the house because it is their first, day in the apartment. It's going to be their first night sleeping in the apartment, or so they thought, when Danny notices them. And he stalks them all through Walmart, I'm assuming. We don't actually know, but we have to assume. He watched them. They checked out. They left. He continued to follow them all the way to their apartment complex and watched them for several hours outside.
It's just so creepy. I wonder if they felt like they were being watched.
I get that feeling a lot, myself.
Yeah.
That somebody's watching me. And I want to say, we don't know. I mean, we have no idea, but he literally watched them for several hours, waited for them to wind down and go to sleep. And one interesting fact, and this made me, super grateful. I don't have one of these. It said that most of the apartments he broke into was through the sliding glass door.
Yeah.
He literally would, shimmy a little crowbar into the sliding glass door, and even if you have it locked, it pops it right open.
Yeah.
So if you have one of those in your home, I would probably reconsider that.
Well, I will say as a side note, I didn't see it anywhere else, but I know that I read it somewhere that the girls, Sonia and Christina, their door was actually left unlocked. And that's how he got in. He didn't have to break in because their door was just unlocked. And I'm just saying, lock your doors.
Lock your doors, but like Krystle was saying earlier, back then Gainesville was quiet. A lot of people were moving to the area. University of Florida was if you're from Florida, it was the college that you wanted to go to.
But why would you not lock your doors?
They're just safe. They're just
Lock
safe.
your doors.
Rule 1 on our channel, that we're going to make that rule 1.
Lock
Keep
your
your doors locked, okay? Keep them locked. They might still get in, but maybe that's that few seconds for you to maybe hear that somebody's breaking into your home, and you can find shelter somewhere and grab your gun, your baseball bat, butter knife, I don't care. Whatever you have to do. But, and I'm not going to give him his name yet, because at this point in time, is that a pop socket with lip gloss?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's amazing. Anyways, we're not going to give him his name yet because he hasn't been given that yet. But Danny stalked them for several hours, watched them sleep. Like we said, that's, typical afternoon, just watching two young freshmen at the University of Florida.
I think they were 17.
They were both.
That is ridiculously young.
It is, and he watched them sleep.
That's babies.
And the responding officer walked into probably a scene that they see a lot, but I know this had to have traumatized them.
Oh, 100%.
But the responding officer walked in, and from what they could kind of pick together, from obviously CSI clues and things, they found that Sonia was attacked first in her bed. While she was asleep. It seems like this guy, Danny, he likes to attack people when they're sleeping. Watch them sleep for a little bit and then move on in for the kill. But after the medical examiner, gave his findings, Sonia, unfortunately, was stabbed over 20 times.
That's ridiculous.
Which, if you've watched enough and read enough, that's overkill and typical signs of a sadistic sociopath. Absolutely.
100%.
No feelings, no remorse. Way overkill. I'm sure after the first couple of stabs, she probably bled out and died asphyxiated something. So, 20 stabs, and then just absolutely, think about, there's another young girl sleeping right downstairs it's kind of amazing how she didn't even hear any of that.
I've
thought about that.
What I was kind of reading was that when he walked in, and I don't know that this is fact. This is just what we've read in research, heard on other podcasts.
And the crime scenes are never like 100%.
Yeah.
Like, they're human beings. They give us this evidence, but that might not have been how it happened.
Yeah. So from like what I've read in a couple different places or heard was that when he walked in the door, Christina was asleep on the couch. Christina was asleep on the couch. And he like walked up to her and was like looking at her, trying to decide which one of them he wanted to rape and kill and which one he just needed to get out of the way.
And that's typically how he did his murders.
Yeah. He always got rid of one, and then he would take his time with the one that he...
Which is unfortunate if you're the latter. I mean, it's not, but it, like, how he had to sit there and think about that. You gotta be a certain type of person.
Oh, yeah. A disgusting person.
But he did. He watched Christina sleep downstairs on the couch and made his way upstairs and, as we said, brutally murdered Sonia, stabbing her 20 times, and then, making his way back down. And I thought about that for every murder. Like, not all of them were there two people, but how did the other person not hear? I mean, I know I'm a heavy sleeper, but I'm trying to picture right now.
Because, like, I know, like, in a lot of them, duct tape was a huge thing. Like, he used duct tape to bind them and to gag them with it. Mm-hmm. But even with that, you would think...
It's muffled.
Yeah, you're still going to hear stuff.
The sound of this is going to be creepy to talk about, but the actual sound of stabbing a human being is loud. There's blood splatter. There's things going on. The motion. They're on a bed. You had to hear the bed moving.
Squeaking or something. Like, there's a million different things, different sounds that could have happened. So, like, yeah, you have to wonder. And if she was downstairs, she could have just easily woken up and ran out the house.
Ran out the door. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. And after killing Sonia, he positioned and pulled her body down to the end of the bed as the responding officer described. And then he proceeded to go downstairs, viciously rape Christina, and begin to mutilating her body, which he had a calling card. And that's another thing that I sat here and was thinking as a woman. His calling card was he mutilated poor Christina and removed both of her nipples.
Oh, that just hurts so bad to think about. To
think about that, literally, I get chills. And his calling card is he would mutilate them and remove the nipples, and he would always leave one nipple and take the other with him, which is just think about that. Like, every killer has their calling card, and I just want to know how he landed on this one. Like, what was the thought process? Like, I think I'm gonna take a nipple home with me. Like, not an earring.
A nipple.
And I don't mean to laugh or make this a joke, but normally they take an earring or a picture or something from inside the home that kind of they can look back on and relive the moment, which is just sick, but that's normally how it happens.
I think for me, the worst part of the whole Sonia and Christina murders, the part that always hurts me the most is the fact that her or Christina's parents were just outside of the apartment. Like, they're the ones who wanted to check on the house or the apartment because they hadn't heard from the girls in a couple of days, and it worried them. And like, I don't know how, I can't even fathom how they must have felt knowing that they just needed someone to check on their daughters or their daughter.
And they were just thinking that, first day of college, getting ready.
They forgot to check. And they probably at first felt like they were over, like, being helicopter parents, and they were over, what's the word? I can't think of the word that I would be using here, but that, they were just being overprotective.
Protective, yes.
I know that's probably how they felt. They probably felt at first that, this was just, it's just them thinking too much out of their head and them too being worried. And then I can only imagine how that changed so fast in the instance when they saw, the responding officer's face, because his face
It
had to
tells
tell
it all,
everything.
and they have to give that unfortunate news to the parents. And it's not just like you walk in and, maybe stab one time. These girls were literally...
They were butchered.
Mutilated. And his calling card, he mutilated, chopped off her nipples, took one, left one. And he always liked to place the bodies in some type of derogatory position. Which I'm just... there's a lot of calling cards, and we'll talk more about Danny, but he was a lover of horror films, and he definitely lived up to that when he committed these murders, because it actually looked like a horror movie scene. I'll pause it. And I know I've already mentioned this particular person's name. As a Floridian, you know this person. It's where he was finally captured as well. But when the medical examiner, Dr. William Hamilton, did his autopsy on the girls, which there's really not much of an autopsy to be performed. We know what happened to them, but they have to do it. In his findings, he actually described the girls' murders as a Ted Bundy-styled killing. Which chills. That's
100%.
I know probably when Danny was reading all this stuff and listening to these people describe him as this probably gave him like a rush of excitement, being described as another, well-known serial killer that, escaped as well. But was thankfully was captured later on. And less than 24 hours later, 9 hours later actually, 2 miles away, police are called for another wellness check on another young girl fitting the exact same description as Sonia and Christina. She did not show up for work, so being the great friend that they are, they called and asked for them to just kind of drive by, see if she's home. Maybe, she overslept. Maybe she's sick, not feeling good. Which, shout out to that person, because who knows how long her body could have been left in her home. Like, thank goodness Christina's mom did that check, because they were in their apartment for 2 days before they were found on August 26th.
27th.
Was it? I wrote August 26th.
Oh, I don't know.
Why am I off on my days? I wrote 25th. He's born on 26th. So definitely cut that out then. Oh, it's in my this note. So I said August 24th is when he killed them, and then 26th is when Mom called. Oh, okay.
Yeah, 26.
I was like, dear Lord, I'm one off on all my numbers.
She was found, or Christina would have been, I think,
the 27th.
27th.
Because it's 9 hours later.
It was that night.
So on August 27th, the responding officer, which coincidentally Krystle brought to my attention, is the wife of the responding officer that did the wellness check for Sonia and Christina, which I knew it was a female responding officer, but I didn't even think to connect the two names together when I was doing my research. Unfortunate that they have to share,
that burden almost.
Finding a victims of the same killer, which they don't know yet, and being spouses.
Yeah. I can't imagine, Ray, which was the man from the first wellness check, he had to have felt...
I'm sure he
that's
went...
heavy. That's not something you just see and can go do your job the next day. That's rough. I can't imagine what I would be thinking if I walked into seeing that. I couldn't have done it. And then 9 hours later,
your
wife does the same thing, but not to say that hers is worse, but
I would
argumentatively, you could say that hers was worse.
What we're about to talk about, Krista, I out of all of them, I think, I don't know why he did the most to her, but it's just gruesome. And I'm sure Officer Ray, when he went home that night after that, they probably talked about it, over dinner or something.
Didn't.
Or they didn't.
Maybe, I don't know that I could. I don't know that if I wouldn't just shut it out. That's therapy.
You have to assume that she was probably comforting him, like, it's another day on the job.
Yeah.
And then not knowing 9 hours later, she was literally going to walk into an even worse crime scene.
A lot of therapy probably happened.
Oh my God.
Go get therapy. Everyone deserves therapy.
Yes. Rule number 2, therapy is okay.
Shout out BetterHelp.
Yeah, mental health matters.
We'll take a sponsorship from BetterHelp.
But 9 hours later, which is crazy, it's 9 hours later, and it's less than 2 miles away from Christina and Sonia's apartment, which is, if you were living in that radius, that area, I'm thinking about all those people, how terrified they were. You couldn't even order a pizza because for some reason, people were convinced, the media was convincing these people that this killer was the pizza man. And if you ordered a pizza, it might be the last day that you're alive on this earth, which, if that's how I'm going to go out, pizza, I'll go out that way. But less than 2 miles away.
Just let me eat the pizza first.
Let me eat the pizza first, and then do as you please. But the responding officers go to do another wellness check on Krista, and unfortunately, they walk into a scene, like we were saying, is you need mental health matters. You seek therapy because just the way that this murder was executed. Krista's body was found on her bed, and just a puddle of her own blood everywhere. And this part is just so creepy to say, and this is why I was talking about horror movies earlier. And
if you don't like gruesome stuff, you may want to skip ahead.
Yeah, trigger warning. The responding officer, she turned around because they were kind of confused because Krista's body was, sprawled out on the bed, but her head was missing. She had been decapitated. And when the responding officer turned around and, CSI is collecting evidence, they found that her head was placed on a bookshelf that was directly in front of her bed, and her head was actually watching her own body laying on the bed. And
it gives me chills.
It gives me chills, and that's why I was mentioning horror movies, because Danny, that was something that he was very much into. The original Halloween from the 1970s was actually his favorite horror film. Don't ask me how I know that. I did a lot of research on him, because I was like, man, what was going on inside of this guy's head for him to just one day want to viciously murder 8 people. And that's very much, if you've ever watched any of the Halloween movies, that's definitely a Michael Myers move right there. I still have chills thinking about it. It was very theatrical. It was very, very, very much a horror mover. Oh my God. It was very much a horror movie scene that they walked into. If you want to add anything?
No, that one just always makes me
I'm
sad.
not taking anything away from Krista. I don't feel like talking about hers as much. I don't know what this poor young girl did, but out of all the murders we're going to talk about, hers was the most gruesome, the most vicious,
think so.
The most degrading.
I don't know, it just makes me sick to think about. I think I read somewhere that he had used a screwdriver to break into her apartment.
A sliding glass door.
Yeah, and then he hid behind a bookcase or a bookshelf or something and just waited for her.
He watched all of them for several hours before killing them.
And all I can think is, like, what did this poor girl do to deserve this? And the answer is nothing. She didn't do anything to deserve it. No one deserves this. Well, maybe he deserves that to happen to him, but, like, I don't know. It just breaks my heart.
And he did his calling card of course, I can't talk, calling card. And of course, he did his calling card. Both of her nipples were cut off, taking one and leaving one, which is just, I'm not trying to make a joke, but it puts the lotion on the skin, you know?
Yeah.
That's what I thought about when, like, if I feel like he was taking small things from different horror movies, which obviously that movie came out after this, but you get what I'm saying. It's like he took little pieces of horror movie killers and tried to, like, make it himself.
Because he wasn't original.
He wasn't original. And he actually, like we said, stayed in Krystle's apartment for several hours after, even eating some of the food in her kitchen.
What serial killer was it that every time he would kill someone, he would go in their kitchen and drink a glass of water and then rinse it out? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I feel like it's the
one... Like, that was his thing.
It's like, the one from California that he was actually just caught. He was a police officer.
Maybe. I don't know. If someone knows, you can tell us.
Let us know. Somebody write in.
Or maybe I just made that up. But I really think there was, like,
I think it's the
killer.
guy. What is it? The Golden State Killer?
I don't know.
Was it the Golden State Killer? Everybody write into us.
I don't know. Maybe he was. Maybe it wasn't.
Who was actually just convicted, and he was actually a police officer back when he was committing those crimes.
It's so weird that a lot of these serial killers have, like, they want to go into law enforcement of some kind.
All I'm saying is we will be talking about conspiracy theories at the end of the month, and maybe we will do a segment on the connection between serial killers and police officers. Not too long after that, the town is freaking out. This is the third young female around the university that is found viciously murdered inside her own home. And then several days later...
Actually, it was a day later.
Was it a day later?
Yeah.
I feel like this all...
It's amazing. In a 3-day span.
It's amazing how quickly he killed all of these people in, like, such a short amount of time.
Because Sonia and Powell were found on the 26th.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the early hours of the 27th, that's when Krystle was found.
Mm-hmm. And
then our next two victims were found on Tuesday, the 28th.
So from the 24th, because Sonia and Christina...
They were there for a few days.
Mm-hmm. So from the 24th to the 28th of August. But I'm going to pass it over to Krystle now to talk about Tracy and Manuel.
Yeah, so Tracy and Manuel were just roommates. Manuel was a football player. He was kind of stocky, just kind of a built guy, and put that in your mind. He was a pretty big guy. He was an athlete, so I think it said he was 6'3", so he was tall,
like 250
I think it said he was
pounds.
200 pounds even, but I don't know. But either way, he was a big guy. And then
because
him and Tracy had been friends in high school, so they had just moved in together. Her parents felt good about it because, hey, he's a big old guy. I think I'd feel pretty safe with my daughter living with this buff guy.
And up to this point, he's only attacked, petite women that were by themselves.
Yeah. So, at 7 o'clock on Tuesday morning, Manuel's friends, or Manny as he's called, his friends started getting worried about him. And their friends, one of his friends, Tommy Carroll, was sent to check on him. So he gets to the apartment. The maintenance man by the name of Christopher Smith went with him, and they decided that they were going to go check in the apartment. They knocked on the apartment door. No one was answering. And so Christopher went ahead and opened the door. Well, when they opened the door, that's when they kind of got the shock of a lifetime. That's when they saw Tracy's naked body, obviously not exactly posed in the same way that Powell and Hoyt had been posed. But they found her her naked body on the ground in the hallway between the two different bedrooms. And they noticed that there was a dark bag sitting above her head. And that is important because as soon as they saw that, they freaked out, which was understandable. And Christopher just slammed the door and locked it. They waited a few minutes, and then they returned about 5 minutes later with the cops when the police had gotten there. And when they went back up to the apartment door was now unlocked, and the bag above her head was gone. So, I mean, you could assume by the evidence kind of tells you, like, what else could have happened other than they kind of caught him in the act. That kind of sounds like what it was to me.
He was still inside the apartment.
Now, I mean, like, a lot of the other scenes, there were stuff that our research had showed that he did, like, a really deep cleaning of the apartment or place that they killed the women. Like, he would clean the bodies, he would clean their bathrooms, he would, whatever, the whole area, he would try to clean it up as much as possible so he didn't leave any DNA.
And every time that he would place the duct tape on them when he was done, he would carefully pick it up, roll it up, and take it with him, kind of no evidence left behind.
Yeah, and it was also noted that Tracy, her hair was wet when they found her. Like, she had a towel under her body, and her hair was wet, as if he had just, tried to clean her body and clean his evidence off of her. I read a really sad part that kind of made me just feel like I was reading a real life horror movie, that said that when he broke into their house, he immediately went after Manuel or Manny.
Well, you have to take out the
threat. And he said that he fought with him and that Manny fought pretty hard, and he ended up being able to stab him 31 times. And in the midst of him stabbing him is when Tracy actually walked into the room and saw him being murdered by Danny, and asked him if he was the one who was doing these killings, and was like, "You're the one who's doing all this." And so she took off and she ran, or this is what Danny's account of it was that she ran, went to her room, shut the door. He broke the door down, got her out of the room, and then killed her. Well, he didn't immediately kill her. He obviously took her time. And I believe he said that he, quote, kept her alive on purpose for, like, a fairly long time.
He was inside the apartment for hours.
So I think I like this one because he kind of got caught in the act. It showed how much time he literally spent with each person in there.
It seems like with each murder he was just getting, like, progressively worse.
And you have to know, by this is your, fourth and fifth murder.
Yeah. He's gotten more practice
in 3 days. You have to assume that the entire city is full on panicked. Like,
it is panic because the news outlets that's all they're talking about. I mean, rightfully so. 5 people have just been viciously murdered within several block radius. All young college students of the University of Florida. They're telling you on the news that it could be the pizza man. I mean, that was mentioned so many times. That's why I made that joke earlier. You couldn't order pizza. You couldn't get your cable fixed. Like, the cable guy coming over could be the killer. And all the local pawn shops and gun shops were literally selling out of every single type of weapon because, rightfully so, these people were afraid to even leave their home, go to school, go to class, go to work.
Even if in your home, you're not safe, though.
No, because he's breaking
into your home,
to your sliding glass doors. That needs to be taken out of every home.
Yeah. So after this, people are completely petrified, obviously, and rightfully so. But Danny is not even on the forefront of people's minds. Like, that's not...
He's not
even a suspect. And actually, there was another suspect the guy named Edmund, who like was really, I think, is a big case of the wrong place at the wrong time. It was a prime example.
He was almost wrongfully convicted of this murder. And I was reading, you know how you go down the dark web. We all fall down into the rabbit holes. When I was doing research for this, and I actually read that kid, he had a rough life. He was getting into trouble, but he actually ended up graduating from the University of Florida after all of this happened.
Oh wow. I mean, because like he had a rough, because it was like, I think something was like he got kicked out of a friend's apartment that happened to be the same apartment that Tracy and Manuel had been killed, and just like all kinds of just like random evidence linked
just
back
a
to
young
him.
kid doing stupid stuff, and somebody happened to mention his name to the police, which is good. Report stuff to the police, but I feel like you should kind of maybe do a little bit of looking up on this person, because he was literally almost convicted of these murders.
Now, I think this is the funny part, and it's not really funny at all. It's just,
we have dark humor, so
yes,
we
it's
laugh
dark
at literally
humor.
everything.
I think it's just Danny was meant to be caught one way or another, kind of thing. It was all meant to happen.
Or he wanted to.
Saw that while all this was happening and they were trying to catch or track down Edmund and accuse him of the crime, Danny and his drug dealer friend, basically, had almost been caught robbing the place. And I think it was a bank robbery. And while they were trying to chase down Danny, that's when they found and came across his little campsite of horrors, as I call it.
And this is when he gets his actual name. This is when the media comes out with the Gainesville Ripper.
And so now they find this campsite of things that, at first look, they had no idea was even connected to the Gainesville Ripper. They just thought it was this random bank robber that living out in the middle of...
now talk about wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, actually, I read somewhere that the tent and mattress that he was getting at Walmart, like, that's the same Walmart and the same trip when he bought that, when he first saw Sonia and Christina. So, like, that's so creepy. But, so yeah, that's when they collected all this evidence that actually would end up convicting him. They just didn't even know it at the time. They just kind of got really lucky, if you ask me.
The media is dropping this name. They're giving him the name, which is weird. Why do we name serial killers? Like, I'm for it. It's like a trademark, but this is when they finally come up with the Gainesville Ripper, because, you know, body 4 and 5 have been found, and the medical examiners are putting all this evidence together, and they're realizing that all 5 people were stabbed with the same knife each time. And he's cutting their clothes off. He's viciously ripping the bras off of the girls before he mutilates them and removes the nipple. And it came out to be, it was a 7-inch long combat knife, which is what they found at the campsite.
But again, they still hadn't connected it yet.
They hadn't. They just thought, oh, there's this
random druggie,
unfortunate dude that just happens to have a really big knife and all this other random stuff in the middle of nowhere.
Well, okay, so after this whole thing, you know, Danny escapes them. He actually cannot apparently stop robbing to save his life. Apparently, he's a little klepto.
I think this just comes back to my theory that he wanted to be caught.
Yeah, I mean,
he's had a rough childhood, rough, you know, wife divorced him, dad's beating him, kicked out of the military, can't stay out of jail, then he starts killing, and I feel like he just was like, please catch me.
Please catch me before I do anything else. Well, he ended up doing a robbery of a Winn-Dixie on a Saturday afternoon in September.
Which, have you heard of Winn-Dixie?
Yeah, we used to have them here.
Okay, because I was going to say that's...
Or did we used to have Piggly Wigglies here?
You had Piggly Wigglies, because Winn-Dixie is, like, if you're from Florida, that is that is
Publix was the thing from Florida.
That's a newer. Winn-Dixie
okay.
is the OG, but yeah, shout out
Maybe
to Publix too. I could take a chicken tender sub right now.
Oh, see, I've only been to like Publix like 3 times in my life. 4 times.
Publix is the place to shop, but when we are known for Winn-Dixie's, it's like Piggly Wiggly's the original. There's not a lot left in Winn-Dixie than Publix, but yeah.
I don't know.
Fun
like,
Florida
I don't
fact.
even think I've ever been to a Piggly Wiggly. I've always just seen them.
It's really cheap. They're always really
It sounds cute.
cold and dirty and
My
looks
mom
like it's
used to
still
tell
from the
me
50s.
that when there was one here, they used to they would find a friend with a truck and they would just go sit in the parking lot of the Piggly Wiggly because it was like the Walmart of Shreveport back in the 80s.
It's a good place to shop. In my hometown, there's only one left. They got rid of all the surrounding ones. But if you have, $20 in your bank account, you're going to be able to get several meals.
Oh, nice. Anyway, now that we went down that rabbit hole, he robbed this Winn-Dixie, and strangely enough, the store manager, shout out to the name of Randy Wilson, because I think he just became like the OG superstar. He actually followed Rowling as he left the Supercenter, like got in his car and followed him. And when when the police arrived, he was able to tell him like exactly where Rowling was, so that the police could pursue him. So they were looking for him.
Why was this guy not hired by the local police department
I don't know,
to be a detective?
I don't know if he was like so like amped up on adrenaline that he was just like, I just gotta get in the car and go after him.
Well, you gotta remember, at this point, the news and the FBI has been called in. They've put this profile out. They've given a brief description.
Like, I don't know if I'd have the nerve to follow anybody. I'd be afraid I'd get killed.
He maybe just got that feeling. He's like, he looks like the guy they're saying on the news. He's being kind of creepy. And Winn-Dixie, I'm gonna get in my car and go for a ride. Which, kudos to him.
Yeah, kudos, major, because I don't think I could do that. But Rowling ended up crashing his car, and the police arrested him. So, a few days after his arrest is when the Gainesville Ripper story, hit the front page and was starting to become a national thing. Everyone started to know about it. Everyone started freaking out. But they still hadn't connected Danny to Gainesville. It really wasn't something that they had connected. But as a little turn of events, while they were investigating, we're going to come back to good old Shreveport.
Good old Shreveport.
While Gainesville and the FBI were investigating this case, they had put out a notice all over the country for similar crimes that they were investigating. And, well, wouldn't you know it, that there was a triple homicide here in Shreveport with really, really, really similar, trademark characteristics of the Gainesville murders. And this one actually happened in 1989, in November, so about almost a full year before any of this other murders happened.
And what was crazy is they had, the FBI had, a list of, 600 people. Mm-hmm. And once they got that tip of Shreveport, it took the list down to, maybe a handful.
Yeah. And they also noted that they had Danny, who was being wanted here in Shreveport for the attempted murder of his father. Mm-hmm. So, now they have this man in custody who's from Shreveport and he's wanted for the attempted murder of his father. And there was murders here in Gainesville that match a triple homicide that happened in Shreveport, where he's from. So you have to be thinking these people at this point are like, ding, ding, ding. So as much as we think that this is the nail in the coffin, they still thought it was a little flimsy, didn't really think too much of it.
Which is absolutely absurd to me when I was doing all my research.
I know, because
you have all this connecting dots literally sitting in your lap, and you're like, we better look at some other people.
For me, it was like they mentioned that, or something mentioned that whoever killed the people in Shreveport, with the female in particular, that they, I think, one of the sources that I had read, it was like somebody had written basically a paper about it, said that he cleaned the female victim with blue-green liquid soap, which I'm assuming is Dawn.
I'm thinking Dawn. When I was reading that too, I was like, it's just Dawn dish soap.
Yeah, so he cleaned her with Dawn and then posed her in a position for maximum effect. Like, that's like... that's him.
It's just like I've been saying, he was such a horror movie buff that he was literally making his own, like, screen scenes.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, when I was looking over the similarities of the case, it was stuff down to the clean of the body.
Mm-hmm.
It was, the fact that he used duct tape, the fact that where the killing happened was clean.
Same knife, same weapon.
Same kind of knife, same kind of forced injury. Both of them, all of the victims that were female were raped and mutilated. Their bodies were put on display. So, like, to me, that's an open and shut case. Like, they have to be connected.
Like, hire us as detectives, because I would have thrown him immediately into jail right then and there.
So that's when they started looking at the evidence that they collected from the bank robbery that they found at his campsite. And some of the items that they found were bedding, a gun, a ski mask, a cassette tape, and a screwdriver. Did you listen to what was on the cassette tape?
I did. Okay, and I wrote some notes here. Let me get my handy dandy notebook.
Because it really freaked me out when I was, like, listening to what he was saying.
Was it the one for his mom and his brother?
Yeah, but it's like at the very end, like when he's leaving.
Oh, I don't know if I listened to the one they found at the campsite when it was kind of like a goodbye.
Well, yeah,
goodbye tape.
Yeah, it was like a goodbye tape, and it's probably the same one we're thinking about.
All of it.
But like he was just talking about that, and he was talking about how this is Danny Rowling and Underneath the Stars Tonight, and then as like at the end of farewell, he's like, I'm signing off. I got some things I gotta do.
Yeah, and then that's
when he went to get killed. And I'm like, that's such a sick foreshadowing. Almost.
And he gave himself a number too. Mm-hmm. He said, I want to kill 8 people, and that's exactly the amount of people he ended up killing before he was caught.
Yeah. And that's crazy to me too. And that's another thing, like, is that why he wanted to get caught after that? Because he had killed 8 people.
Which is crazy. And the thing that got him, that, like you said, the nail in the coffin, like they did collect semen. He raped several of the girls, but you gotta remember, this is the 1990s. DNA back then is like worlds different than what it is today. Like, you can literally give a swab of DNA and you'll have the results like within the day. But so that wasn't even the thing that caught him. And in my mind, I'm thinking, they have that. Yes. It was a single strand of pubic hair found on Tracy's body that was the indicator. And I'm like, one single hair.
Like, even for the 90s, though, that is so impressive to me.
That, when I was reading that, it was impressive, because, I'll let you keep going, but there's more on that I wrote down in my notes. I'm really scared for my mind, because it is sad that the good stuff, which there's not very much good stuff in the story. Yeah. I didn't write down as much in my notes, but all the stuff that was like, man, this dude is a weirdo. I like bolded it, circled it, outlined it, wrote it down several times, because I was like, I've got to talk about this.
So, after he was arrested, they still didn't really have enough to charge him with the murders, but they were able to charge him with, like, the bank robbery and the Winn-Dixie robbery. And he's actually found guilty of those in 1991 and given a life sentence. So, he was in jail at least for life. Well,
They weren't done.
They weren't done.
They came back for more.
I do want to talk a little side note about the fact, just so we can react to this, about the fact that he had that lady Sandra London who was like in love with him and like wrote him love letters and stuff in prison. Did you read about that?
Yes, and there's always them.
I know,
back when okay, so when the Ted Bundy thing was happening, my mom was actually a small child. She was still young when all that was back in the 70s. And my grandparents, I even asked them about it too because they got to watch it on the news, actually on the news. And my granny was always like, there was literally, she's like, I'll never forget it. You could watch them they would actually show on the news him like at his court hearings, the lines and lines of women. The courtrooms would literally be packed with women in love with him, and he's out here killing women.
Yeah,
and that's how it was for Danny. He had women writing in to him. He had women confessing their love.
So like this lady, she did the same thing, and she was trying to convince everybody that she loved him and that she wasn't after, anything, trying to take advantage of him.
Ma'am, he doesn't have anything. He's in prison for the rest of his life.
Prison, right? But like, apparently, I like highlighted this in my notes because I thought it was funny. But she made media appearances, including the Geraldo show. Do you remember that?
The name sounds familiar, but nothing's like coming to my mind.
You will have to Google him. He was like this super like, I don't want to say avant-garde because that's totally the wrong word, but like just look him up.
Flamboyant? Is that a better word?
Kind of, but I loved it, and I used to like watch it with my mom and like my Cuban grandmother. Like that would always kind of be playing, and I remember watching it, and I obviously don't remember this because I was way too young, but I remember seeing like reruns and episodes of Geraldo. But anyway, so we really didn't get any kind of information about the Gainesville killings and him killing them until after he was in prison, like from his own mouth. So the investigative team decided to use his blabbering mouth basically to nail him. So they actually arranged for another inmate, Bobby Lewis, to almost be a spy, I guess you could say.
Which snitches get stitches, but like the stitches in this case were needed because he ratted his own self out.
Oh yes, 100%. So like he would tell Lewis stuff in like excruciating detail, and that's when he admitted that he had decided to kill when he was in prison for the robberies that he went to. That robberies that happened, like,
he probably already thought, I've already done time. My life's not going to go anywhere.
And so Rowling and Lewis were planning to, like, escape, and they were planning to do all this just, I don't even know. They were just weird. I think they're just strange to me.
When the worlds collide.
But eventually Rowling did say that he wanted to confess, but that he would only do it through Bobby Lewis. And it was very weird. I know in some documentaries they kind of like show how involved Lewis was in like every detail of his confession. But he said that he wanted to kill 8 people while in prison, and he would. But as he was confessing to all the Gainesville crimes, that's when he told them that after the trial he would clear up the Shreveport homicides. He wouldn't say anything else about it, but that's all he would say. So they go through the trial. The only person that he had to support him the entire time was this Sandra London lady, who I think actually became his fiance at that point, which I don't understand how you propose to someone for prison. Like,
it's Florida.
Anything
happens in Florida.
It's Florida. So he took sole responsibility for everything. He ended up pleading guilty.
that's what I wrote down in my notes. That was that was the creepy thing. When they did all this and they were trying to get him to confess to all of this, they let him know that actually they did have that pubic hair. When they brought him into the room and they asked if they could have, collect a couple of hairs, which is awkward to ask, I know he's a serial killer, but ask a grown man, hey, sir, can I have a few hairs from your genitals?
Mm-hmm.
And without missing a beat, Danny takes 2 fistfuls of pubic hair and rips it off of his body.
In front of his female public defender.
Didn't even make a face, no sign of pain. And, if that's not, signs of a sociopath, I don't know what is. I can't even tweeze my eyebrows.
I know, without making
pain. Some kind of face or noise.
So, during the trial, they watched videotaped confessions that had been made. And it honestly, I think when I was looking at it, it only took the jury a little bit of time to say that he was guilty.
The plea of guilty,
yeah, and he did plead guilty, and I read somewhere that said that when they told him that if he pleads guilty, it most likely meant a death conviction.
And that's why I kept saying...
he still chose it.
That's why I kept saying that I think he was just, he wanted to be caught, maybe he couldn't kill himself, and this is...
Yeah.
He knew.
So, out of respect for talking about everything that happened and everyone's part about this, he was convicted of that, and so now let's circle back around to those Shreveport murders that he needed to clear up. This is his trigger. This is where it all started.
Mm-hmm.
The story behind it is that he had been working at a local Mexican restaurant called Pancho's. You ever been to a Pancho's?
Mm-hmm.
They were my favorite because you could raise the flag when you needed someone's help. Loved Pancho's. We used to go there every Sunday after church. But he was working at one, and the manager fired him, and he lashed out, was threatening to kill the manager and another person that worked there, and rather than kill them, he decided that he was going to kill the girl that he had been stalking. It was actually a young girl named Julie Grisham. He had first spotted her working at a Dillard's in what was called South Park Mall, which doesn't exist anymore, but it's where I don't know if you know where it's at. It's the big church when there's a random Burlington beside the church. That was South Park Mall.
Oh.
So that's where she worked. And so he had followed her to her house, and her father was there, and I'm assuming it's her nephew, because everything that I read said that it was her father and his grandson. But to me, that means it's probably her nephew, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Tom was her father, and her nephew was Sean. He said that when he came into the house, he killed the little boy first, Sean, who was 8 years old.
Which is just on another level.
That is... You're already, you're going to rape and murder, but also, argumentatively, not even argumentatively, factually, you could say his first murder was an 8-year-old little boy.
Is a child.
Yeah, child. And then that was followed by her father, Tom, who he killed, also by stabbing to death. When he finally got to Julie, he raped her, tortured her, did all the same things that he ends up doing in Gainesville, but he does pose her laying back on the bed with her legs spread eagle and had fanned her hair all out above her head. Which is really sick.
Which again, it's amazing that all these things are happening inside this house and nobody hears it.
Exactly.
That's just the one. I've already mentioned it a lot, but when I was doing the research for this, I just kept saying, how are they not hearing this?
Yes.
One of my kids could be eating a chip in the next room,
and you could hear it.
And I would hear the chip. Yeah, I don't know. But unfortunately, it
happens.
It happens.
It happens. So Finally, it comes to the day that Danny Rowling is sentenced to die. Again, this circles back to my life. You do get to have, like, someone come, like, you can ask people to come, whatever. And actually, a really good friend of mine, her grandfather was the pastor of the church that Danny went to as a child, where he met his wife and sang in the choir. And he always considered him to be his pastor, so he asked him to come visit him in Florida. And my friend, she told me she was like, I think when I looked at the text messages of me talking, she said that she was like 10 when it happened. And she said that they don't talk about it a lot, but every once in a while when they're together as a family, like, the conversation will come up about how crazy this whole thing was. And
how can you not talk about this?
And her grandfather will bring it up, and, you know, they'll talk and ask questions. But he had asked him to come, and this is my second-hand telling or third hand of this. This is coming from my friend telling me what her grandfather always told her. But that he got there and sang a hymn, like wanted to sing an old hymn. And I guess he asked, like, so I was reading other stuff too, but asked him, like, if he was going to be forgiven for everything that he did. And he wanted to pray through and receive the Holy Ghost again, I guess, assuming and hoping and thinking that he was going to be
forgiven
for all this.
I'm biased on that topic because I always feel like people do, like, the most outrageous stuff, and then as soon as they go to prison, they say that they have found Jesus,
which is just, to me, I think is bold.
Like,
but whatever.
Sir, you literally killed and brutally murdered,
beheaded a woman,
and faced her looking at her own body. Like, I don't think Jesus is gonna help at this point. I mean, it could, but like
we've kind of also gone really far. Like,
I don't know. I just always feel like that every time I'm looking or reading something or watching a documentary. I'm like, they're gonna say that they.
But you also have to think how many of them are actually sincere, and how
That's
many
the
of them
thing.
are just like saying it because
it makes me feel bad that I think that way. But there are some that are like, oh, I found Jesus, and then they get out and they go and kill again.
Oh, I'm gonna kill somebody again. Yeah.
No, that's not Jesus, sir. That's not even close.
So he supposedly did all these things. You can look these things up too. They're pretty easy to find. But he ended up giving him a letter. And in the letter, that is where he actually fully confesses to the Shreveport murders and the fact that he killed all of them. So he literally held on to this information of if he did it or not until his last possible second. Which I don't even understand why. Why would you wait?
Maybe
they can't. It's not going to get extradited.
Maybe
back.
That was his little secret, something that he could finally hold on to. And when we're talking about this, you got to think about it took 12 years. I don't know why. I've never understood why people can be on death row for so long.
It makes zero sense.
I know they have to do, like, there's several appeals and trials, but like he was on death row for 12 years. So maybe it was that day and he's like, well, this is for real. Maybe. I'm finally going to be, sentenced to death. Let me just speak my piece real quick.
I don't know. It just, he's a weirdo. That's all we have, but it's
interesting.
He's gone.
He's gone. He was sentenced to death by lethal injection on October 25th, 2006, which the anniversary of it is in a few days, actually.
Oh, well, that's kind of creepy. I didn't even think about that.
As we are sitting here recording it, I was thinking about that last night when I was looking at it. And for 12 years, maybe it's better. Maybe it was better for him to be on death row for 12 years thinking about
what he did,
and maybe that kind of gives the family some peace of mind. I know it doesn't.
It's still just sad. Like, as much as I enjoy talking about serial killers and missing person cases and individual, just like gruesome, horrible murders, it's always hard when you just sit there and think about it, because the fact that a human being could do that to another human being, like, that's just rough.
It's rough, and that's why when you were talking about he was wanting to find faith, I kind of don't believe it, because, you know, when they do sentence people to death, you're allowed to view it, which I think is kind of barbaric, but, you know, do what you want. The families actually came to watch it, and everything that I looked up and saw and watched, it says that he looked in the faces of all the family members and had absolutely no remorse.
Oh, or 100%. So, he had zero remorse.
No faith has been found. It is very much lost and gone, and will never be returned because he was sentenced to death.
Good riddance. I mean,
good riddance. It's also ironic, though. We put people in jail for killing people, and then in return we kill them. Oh, how the turntables have turned.
I mean, it's always crazy. I mean, obviously this is not a podcast about the morality of the death penalty, but if you think about it,
I was thinking about that when I was reading about that, about how he was kind of looking at all the families and just looked at every single one of them while he was waiting to die, and I'm like, what? Just ironic. It's just ironic. He's here for killing 8 people, and they're watching him be killed.
I don't know. I guess it's also kind of a situation of, if I was the family member of somebody that was killed, would I want them to sit in jail for the rest of their life?
You don't, because I don't think...
And get fed, and get food, and get health care, and get, you know, even if they're in solitary 24 or 23 hours of the day.
It's a lot of money.
Do I want them still breathing? Yeah, do I still want them breathing air and being supported? Or do I want them just gone from the face of the planet?
I don't know.
So, like, I don't even know how I would feel.
I don't know. If you're listening out there, I hope you're listening. Maybe just don't kill people, and you won't have to worry about all of this.
Because who else gets the death penalty other than people that kill people? That's it, right? Like, you really just have to, like... Oh, shoot.
God, that scared me.
I just spilt my water bottle. I don't know who else gets the death penalty. I think that's it. But
how do you want to end this? Do we want to pause it?
No, we can just end it.
Okay.
Well, I think that's all we have. You have anything else you want to add?
We learned two rules on today's episode. Lock your doors, and therapy was number 2.
Yes.
Mental health matters, and lock your dang doors, people. But that is all that we have for today.
So we hope you enjoyed our first little podcast. We know there's probably bumps and it's not smooth and it's
lots
probably
of
a
rambling.
Hot mess. But, you know, whatever, we're having fun. But we would love it and enjoy it if you gave us 5 stars wherever you're listening to this podcast at. Tell your friends and tell them that you know it's rough, but just to stick with us.
Yeah.
And if you have any recommendations for, like, major crime cases you want to hear us cover, conspiracy theories, any paranormal stories that you've experienced personally, or anything local, if you happen to be from the Shreveport area or really Louisiana in general, or if you're from the Florida area, if you have any local cases you want us to cover, go ahead, let us know.
Because we will be a variety podcast. It will be true crime, paranormal, conspiracy theories, any and all thing creepy and that makes you have the goosebumps is what you will find here on.
And then maybe by the time you listen to our next episode, we'll have a Patreon set up and maybe an email. Like, you'll have a place you can email us or DM us or whatever you want to do to contact us. There will be ways, but anyway, hope you enjoyed our first podcast, and can't wait for you to hear the next one.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye.